Hello and good day to everyone. Facts Talk Podcast is back, and we are thrilled to welcome you to the second episode of Bantay Dagat, the role of the Maritime Zones Law in protecting and harnessing the Philippines' maritime domain. This series is made possible through the collaboration between Facts Asia and the Waypoints Project, with support from the Australian government. I'm RJ Parcon, and your host for this series. So, in the previous episode, we delved into the specifics and importance of the Philippine Maritime Zones Act. This episode highlighted how the legislation aligns domestic laws with UNCLOS, defines our maritime boundaries, and strengthens our sovereignty over our territorial waters and our sovereign rights over the Philippines' EEZ and extended continental shelf. Particularly, it is a landmark legislation as it provides a legal framework to assert the Philippines' rights, and it also strengthens the Philippines' maritime governance initiatives and processes. In this episode, we will further examine the Maritime Zones Act and its implications for the blue economy. Being an archipelagic nation and considering the comparative advantages in terms of its natural and other resources, the Philippines has a great potential to capitalize on the country's blue economy to drive economic growth and sustainable development. A study authored by the group of Dr. Rhodora Azanza noted that the total potential annual monetary value of marine ecosystems of the Philippines, including its continental shelf, was estimated to be at 1.5 trillion US dollars using 2007 prices. Likewise, the maritime areas of the Philippine archipelago are also part of the Coral Triangle region, and its 26,000 square kilometers of coral reef is reckoned as the global center of marine biodiversity. This data opens the opportunity to connect the economic benefits and sustainable use and management of resources and ecosystems within the Philippine waters. For the second episode of Bantay Dagat series, we are honored and privileged to have with us Dr. Rhodora Azanza. Dr. Azanza is renowned for her groundbreaking research on seaweeds, harmful algal blooms, seafood safety, coastal environmental management, and the blue economy in the Philippines. Her study on toxic dinoflagellate species have revolutionized our understanding of pyrolytic shellfish poisoning and algal bloom dynamics. Dr. Azanza's research has not only identified factors influencing algal bloom occurrences, but also paved the way for proactive strategies to mitigate their harmful effects, ultimately minimizing socioeconomic impacts on social communities. Hello and welcome to Facts Talk Podcast, Dr. Rhodora Azanza.
Good morning, RJ. It is my pleasure to have this podcast with you. And thank you for that beautiful and comprehensive introduction.
Once again, Dr. Azanza, thank you very much for being here with us. It's a privilege to have you, especially to discuss the blue economy, the issues within blue economy. But Dr. Azanza, before I dive into some specific questions, I would like to touch on some personal information about you, no? So we want to know more about you po and what fuels your commitment and passion towards the blue economy.
Let me begin by telling you something about the blue economy as what we have uh, given importance in that paper mentioned by RJ. Well, when we give values to the blue economy, we considered everything, meaning all the goods and services, from the protective function, structural function, provisionary, yung foods yun, etc., and cultural values. That was the reason why the values were high. The values were high in terms of peso during that time, but as what we have told the readers, the values may go up or go down depending on how we harness the different aspects of our blue economy. And it should also be remembered that we did not consider the continental shelf and even the EEZ. Beyond the archipelagic zones, we did not consider in the valuation. So therefore, the valuation could be higher based on the present endowments to the Philippines and how we are going to make use of them. Okay, so that's a preliminary statement on the blue economy.
Thank you very much, Doc. Just to clarify also, the extended continental shelf was not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
included, right? Yes.
Yep.
So imagine po, no, the potentials of our water if we include the potentials of the ECS also. So it might,
Yes.
what you've mentioned, it's going to be higher.
Yep.
I just want to pin on what you've mentioned earlier, Doc. You said you gave the group gave everything value for everything, and all sectors were included
Yep.
in your quantification of the blue economy, right? So my question really is, so how can we further integrate the blue economy, overall economic initiatives, and even our development plans, especially given that there's a high potential?
Okay. So, as what has been mentioned, and based on what we have discussed previously and in the current discussions, we need to consider the values in terms of the things, the goods and services that they can give right away at the present generation, but also in the next generations. And also we need to consider in terms of the maritime zone law. Yeah, yeah, is it a law? Yeah, it's a law now. Is that the communities can have access now? Supposed to be. They will have the directions for what they can access and what they can do with the endowments from the sea, the coastal areas, for the good of the community. So I should be looking at the blue economy at this point for the good of the community right away. The coastal community are right there in the seascape where you have the endowments that can be harnessed for the blue economy.
Thank you very much, Doc. Actually, what you mentioned, no, about having communities access the blue economy, it brings me back to what President Marcos actually mentioned during his signing of the Maritime Zones Act. He also noted the same, that the Maritime Zones Act actually will allow our fisher folks to pursue their livelihood free from uncertainty and harassment, and would
Mhm.
also allow the Philippines to further harness its mineral and energy resources po in our seabed. So
Yeah.
that actually also highlights the importance of sustainable development for the Philippines. So would you think po the Maritime Zones Act, especially being considered as a foundational policy, would be able to help the Philippines sustainably harness its marine resources?
Yeah. The Maritime Zones Law Act would guide the lawmakers, policymakers in terms of the extent of what they have in their coastal areas. You know, we have land zone planning, but we don't have marine and coastal zone planning. And this particular Maritime Zones Act can guide us in the marine spatial planning because in other countries, no, you consider the extent of what you have and what you have in terms of direction, size, and everything, but also in terms of the bounties, the natural resources, living and non-living. And most of the time, it should be a community decision. Well, in the first place, in the blue economy, the benefits should go back to the community. So therefore, in the marine spatial planning and sustainable development, should be all the stakeholders in that particular community guided by national policies that should be planning strategically, not only in terms of mid-term plans, but long-term plans for the good of the present people in the community, but for also for the next generation. And taking care of the resources, the blue economy resources.
In order for us to really take care of our oceans and to harness it sustainably, long-term strategic planning is necessary. So in terms of strategic planning, Doc, and you've mentioned this earlier also, that all sectors must be involved, right? And I think we've also discussed this in person when we talk with each other, no? It really, for me, it's very interesting also how we can further integrate or collaborate with the private sector. So how do you think can the private sector be more involved?
I think the private sector should be involved in many ways because they do not or should not be participating in terms of what money or business they can do, but also what they can share in terms of sustainably utilizing the bedrock of the blue economy because the marine environment is the bedrock. If the coastal and the marine environment are gone, the laws in terms of physical mismanagement and so on, then you don't have a vibrant blue economy. So if you consider all the aspects of blue economy, transport, uh, mineral resource, and so on, you need to consider as a group, as a community, what should be given priorities. If we have more mineral resources in this area, then what should we do to harness the other resources and to make the fishermen be more, to survive and earn more? And so, therefore, in the blue economy, there is a decision by the group, and then the sharing of the benefits of the coastal and marine resources. There's a government portion, the private sector portion, the fishermen, and all the others in the community. There should be national policies, national guidelines like the Maritime Zone Law Act, and then there should be guidelines for the Blue Economy Act. But the decision should be at the local basis. Could be the provincial or the entire area wherein you have the bay, because the planning should be not only for the next 5 years, because you might be losing the other resources that could be more useful in the long run. So, ganun yun. Yan ang ginagawa sa ibang bansa. It's a community stakeholders planning with government laws and policies being used in the determination of the strategies.
Again, no, you've mentioned that it's really important to look at things in the long term, not even just for 5 years. And in order for us to do this, there are some best practices already, and
Yes.
this includes community stakeholders planning, but with government policies in mind
Yes.
already.
Yes.
And you've mentioned, Doc, about the Blue Economy Act, and I know you're also really an expert already on the Blue Economy Act, no? So can you tell us more po about the Blue Economy Act and maybe as a foundational policy, how knowing our maritime zones can actually help us in implementing the Blue Economy Act po?
So the Blue Economy Act, which has been passed at the lower house and passed also at the lower house and upper house, but they still have to do the bicameral meeting to put things together. But the horizon there is really to make use sustainably and equitably the blue economy uh, endowments, the potentials of the country in a more logical and in a more sustained way. And so therefore, in this particular act, I hope the bicameral body would make sure that the framework would consider all the other aspects of the blue economy potentials and how they will be protected and how the local communities can be really gaining in the short run and in the long run from these processes. And then in the Blue Economy Act, it's going to be an intergovernmental body that will be responsible for planning and making decisions. And it will be under the NEDA in terms of the secretariat, well, based on the upper house bill. And then also, hopefully, there will be a person chairing that Blue Economy Intergovernmental Committee I don't know yet what they will call this after the bicameral meeting. But now it's going to be good because we're putting everything together in one. I mean, all the concerns, whether it's going to be the fisheries, the aquaculture, transportation, tourism, and all the other aspects of blue economy, and looking at the problem and looking at the strategies uh, way ahead and considering the potentials and the benefits that the people can get from these blue economy endowments.
I think there are two key words, no, based on what you've mentioned. It's really the sustainability and equity
Yes,
of what we do with our blue economy. And that's what's
yes,
very important also, especially when we think long term. And you've mentioned even longer than 5 years, no? That's what's
yes.
necessary. So, Dr. Azanza, at this point, thank you very much for joining us today. And once again, this is another session where I've learned a lot of valuable lessons, no? Especially in harnessing the blue economy and really the role of communities in harnessing the blue economy. But Dr. Azanza, before we end po, are there any parting words on the importance of the blue economy and maybe some tips on how we can sustainably harness
Yeah,
the blue economy?
it's going to be, I think it's going to be a blue and nice and equitable future for us if we only make good our promises as maybe as politicians
Mm.
and as scientists, do good, make good for the good of the community especially, and considering also relationships with other countries. No, I did not consider here the political aspects, but uh, we need to consider in totality what we need, what the future should look for the next generation. But I am hopeful that all these laws being passed, including the IRRs that will be implemented well, would make our future better. No, now this time harnessing the greater part of our God-given natural endowments, I call it, where more water, we're 70% water and 30% land. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a blue and bright tomorrow, not only for us, but for our children and grandchildren. Maraming salamat for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Azanza, for an insightful second Bantay Dagat episode. And really, that's our hope, as what you've mentioned. That's really beautiful, beautiful words, no? A blue, nice, bright, and equitable future for the Philippines and the generations to come. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Azanza, and to everyone for joining us here on Facts Talk Podcast Bantay Dagat series. Thank you all very much. If you've loved and learned from this podcast, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. I also invite you to like and follow Facts Asia official social media accounts, facebook.com/FactsAsia on Facebook and at FactsAsia.org on Twitter. You may also visit our website at factsasia.org to stay updated on our project. Well, everyone, that's all for now. This is your host, RJ Parcon, and until the next episode of the Bantay Dagat podcast.